Okay, greetings everyone. This is First Centurion 753 with a new series for Geopolitical Simulator 4 Power and Revolution. And this series is going to be called French Colonialism. We are going to go ahead and play as the country of France. This idea has been thrown around my channel a bit for the past couple months, I think. A couple people suggested it. Also basing it on an ideas that I sort of got from a YouTube channel, Caspian Report. And Caspian Report is a channel that covers geopolitics. I'm going to go ahead and leave links to two different videos from that channel in the description below. Those links are to videos about France and French colonialism. It's kind of like the basis where I got a lot of the information for this series that I'm doing here. Take a real quick look at France. It's the Republic, semi-presidential center political tendency. I don't remember seeing that much in previous games. We were playing the most updated edition of this game, as well as 2019 add-on. So there's a couple of new additions. I guess by now you guys have seen most of them, but that's where we're at. All right, this is a center political tendency, center party with Emmanuel Macron's party. I guess they won't actually say his name, but the character, the avatar will resemble him. We have Paris, 20 different regions, 2.795 billion, all right, almost $2.8 billion GDP. We've got a very low growth rate here, 1.5, and a high unemployment rate of 9.1. So those will be tough. The EU is the currency. And we have GDP per capita, 42,000. That's pretty good. Elections and nuclear weapons. Let's go ahead and check out France. So the basis of this game is on the idea that America is slowly pulling back from its global commitments. The Bretton Woods system was a system of agreements between the United States and countries that aligned with it during World War II and after World War II. The whole purpose was to establish free trade around the world and stop the spread of communism, pretty much. It guaranteed countries would have freedom of seas and free access to all markets, particularly the American market, which is the one that everybody at the end of World War II wanted to have access to, because America was the largest market in the world. And the guaranteeing of the freedom of seas is important because every other navy at the end of World War II was at the bottom of the ocean except for the American Navy. So from 1944, the Bretton Woods system was created, until modern time, the United States has been guaranteeing freedom of seas. And there's really been no need for anyone who outside of the system to have a real navy. So it was mostly done actually for security purposes, not economic interest for the United States. It was more of a security interest to prevent the spread of communism and to also dismantle European imperialism, which I think was more of a side goal there, actually. There's a lot to read about this geopolitics. I actually have two books that I'm going to recommend down in the description below. Both of them deal with geopolitics and the future of the world and geopolitics, and we can check out the introduction here, and then I'll go more into that. This is going to be an overview episode, just so you know. Here's the introduction. I haven't seen this yet. Okay. Me Too movement. There we go.
Year, the head of state lavishly hosted 100 influential feminists from around the world. The party was in full swing until early this morning. Some confirmed opponents to the current government were also on the guest list. One of them told us that this initiative was beneficial for women's causes. Even if deep down, the head of state undoubtedly had an electoral agenda. The final word came from the oldest woman in the nation, who stated that she was delighted to be able to dance without being hit on.
Okay. I don't know if that's exclusive to France. Weeding out terrorists. I don't remember seeing that intro before. All right. So right off the bat, we have Francois Deville, weeding out terrorists, running rampant in our territory. Agencies stand by. We're gonna have to take out terrorists. Terrorists is gonna be a big goal for this one. Also, carbon tax, raising the carbon tax. That's interesting. All right, now the title is French Colonialism. And for those of you who know history, France had a vast empire throughout its history. Parts of Canada, the Caribbean, I believe they still have two Caribbean islands there, and French Guiana. Lots of West Africa belonged to France. Madagascar and Indochina, as well as a few possessions down here. I think the game actually gives us a colony. New Caledonia here is a French colony, so that's interesting. Remnants of the French Empire. There's also some islands around here that belong to France around Madagascar as well. So we have those. The colonial empire that I am going to be referring to in this game, however, is going to focus on West Africa. And if you go ahead and watch those videos of the Caspian Report, they will talk about the hegemonic influence that France still has over West African countries, particularly dealing with their currency. There are two currencies. I'm going to grab them real quick. I have it written down. Two currencies. The CFA, Central African... French African colonies? Countries, I think is what it is. It is actually a currency, the CFA franc. There are two of them. There's one for West Africa, West African franc, and a Central African franc. And the way that when France gave up their colonies after World War II, during this Bretton Woods system, they still retained some influence over them financially. And this influence is based on the agreement that within these French currencies, colonies of French Africa, within these French currencies, 50% of the country's currency reserves must be held in the French treasury. So these countries that have the West franc, the West African franc, and the Central African franc have to hold their currency reserves in French banks. And this is all according to those two videos. You can go ahead and watch them below. There's 14 nations. They benefit from gaining a stable currency. However, they are restricted in how much they can actually use their currency. And according to these agreements, these West African countries have to... It's almost like a French petrodollar. I think we talked about the petrodollar in another previous video, where Saudi Arabia gives its denominations of oil in US dollars, which helps to create a global hegemonic currency of the US dollar, so that all countries want to have reserves in US dollars. Therefore, the US has a lot easier time borrowing money around the world. This same system's happening here in this French West African, Central African system. French firms retain exclusive rights to purchase raw materials from these countries. French aid that is sent to these countries must be spent on French goods. African countries cannot adjust their own interest rates. Therefore, they can't protect against importation, and they're forced to depend on cheap raw materials for export. So a lot of the ways, by being part of this economic system, these West African and Central African countries are under the economic influence of France still today. And the West African franc, well, the countries that are part of it, and I always thought this, it was because I would watch the news, and I remember one time watching the news, I remember seeing French soldiers in West African countries, and I didn't understand why France was still so committed to being in these countries. I didn't think, I don't believe that countries always act on humanitarian, or very rarely act on humanitarian interests, unless it's a political reason that's backing it. So I didn't think France was just being there to be a good guy. France is there to make sure that these countries are still stable, and that these countries that are part of this French system actually remain within the system, because it's part of their, it helps to preserve their economy and their imports and exports. So the countries that are in the West African franc include Benin, which is right here. Burkina Faso, hopefully I pronounced all these right. Burkina Faso is right there. Guinea-Bissau, which I believe is right around here. the Ivory Coast, right there, Republic of the Ivory Coast, Mali, right there, Niger, right there, big Niger country, Senegal, this guy over here, and Togo is right there. Those are in the West African Franc, and that actually consists of a population of 108 million people. This is according to 2013 numbers. I looked them up on Wikipedia, and $78 billion GDP. The Central African countries that belong to the Central African Franc include Cameroon, right there. I can't click out. There it is, Cameroon. Central African Republic, Chad, right there. Republic of Congo, which is this one, not the big one, the little one. Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon, right there. So those countries are going to be the countries I'm going to focus on. And from a geopolitical objective, what I'm going to try to do is maintain good relations with them as one. I may actually, the game doesn't have it. There are, you go to associations, you have to go to international organizations. There are like 2 organizations that sort of focus in that direction. I think this is it. Economic Military Union of West Africa, which actually has... No, it is all those. That is it. But I don't think France has any influence over this in the game. Although, they are all within the same monetary unit. Or they have to hold their currency within French banks. So, maybe I'll try to create a free trade and military alliance with this group. And then I think there's another one too. And that's it right there. Yeah. Economic and Monetary Community of Central Africa. These are the countries, yeah. So we're gonna try to, I guess, create 2 maybe trade blocks, maybe, and military alliances with those countries. I think that might be part of the approach. One goal is going to be to maintain that all these countries have good relations with us. Some of them do. Mali, obviously, there's some terrorism going on here, so we're going to try to help them get involved, intervene in a way to prevent terrorism. I'm not going to conquer any of these countries. However, if any country does go against me, like you have Equatorial Guinea here and Togo, which are not really friendly right now, I may move in, if I can, and overthrow the government, either create free elections or possibly create a colony, restoring the colonialism of France's West and Central African empires here. So that's really the goal there from a foreign policy objective. And it's kind of based on a suggestion that was made by Murat Safal. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong there, buddy. But you had a really good suggestion about a series for Somalia. Although I already did Somalia, and I don't want to go back to Somalia until I've done other nations, because there's a lot of requests for different nations out there, so I don't want to repeat a nation over and over again. France is very well developed here. Look at all this infrastructure. They have tons of railroads and highways and everything. So they are a really strong country. Domestically, also foreign policy, I'm going to focus on a few of these things. I'm going to try to reduce... I'm going to try to take a lead in climate change, because that is what France does. So I'm going to try to get more countries back into the Paris Climate Accords, and in general, reduce global warming as much as I can. There's a lot of information here. Oh boy, look at this. Population, deforestation, atmospheric pollution, acidic, ocean acidity, rising sea levels. Okay, there's definitely a lot of stuff here. Well, I'm going to want to make some goals for that, and I'm also going to want to reduce terrorism. We got a neutral face here. Maybe I can get a smiley face going after some global terrorists here. I should also probably pay attention to cybercrime, and you might want to do something about these climate refugees. I don't know if I can convince other countries to accept refugees or not. So I'm going to want to reduce these global menaces that are happening here, basically. Becoming a world leader. I'm going to try to gain influence in those West African and South African countries. And I think I should also, obviously I want to maintain France's economy, get it up to at least 3 trillion. Lower the unemployment, and I wanted to get involved in space too. There could be some green energy goals. So anyways, I'm not, I guess I haven't fully clarified the goals that I wanted to do with this series, but if you have suggestions, feel free to drop them down below. We want to reduce CO2 emissions. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's begin, actually. One of the first steps is to initiate a carbon tax, or raise a carbon tax. That was a suggestion right away. So that's new to the game. We're going to go ahead and... Where is that carbon tax? Okay, I don't know. 10. Flat rate per ton of CO2 emitted. That'll get us $1.6 billion. Let's make that a new reform, and let's see how much we can do with that. Let's see if we have to add anything to these. Tax reform. Carbon tax reform. Okay, let's go ahead and confirm that. Create the form. I used to do, oh, real quick, go over my finances here, right? Alright, we have about $2.7 billion in debt. That's almost as much as our GDP, 98% of our GDP, so I definitely want to try to reduce that. Deficit of $69 billion. And this is, that's not a lot nationalized. Gini coefficient is 32. That's actually not bad. Let's see what the opinion is on that carbon tax. It passes right off the bat. Wow, look at that. Alright, I don't need to attach anything to that. Amazing. I probably could have increased it a little bit. So yeah, I'm thinking for goals for this series, French colonialism, maintaining influence over West and Central African economic communities, and extending influence by forming trade agreements, free trade zones, and military alliances. Ending terrorism in this area, and I also kind of want to, if we go to the maps, actually, there's supposed to be more maps in this game. I would like to see if I can't just improve the economy overall in these countries. Let's look at let's look at GDP. Let's look at GDP per capita, actually, that's better. GDP per capita. Yeah. Pretty bad. If I can get it all up to average somehow, by helping them with foreign aid and trade agreements, maybe. Can't build anything in these countries. And that would be interesting too. That's another thing. The game still needs to add a few things as far as influencing other countries, having client states. I mean, right now you have China buying up a lot of land and infrastructure in Africa, particularly I think East African countries along the Indian Ocean, and they're going to be probably moving into West and Central African countries as well. So France does not want to allow China to gain influence over its former hegemony, and it's going to create a free trade zone and preserve itself going into the 21st and 22nd centuries, with America retreating from the foreign policy scene. France, if they're going to have influence and maintain their power, they're going to need to probably expand their influence over these former colonies and bring them into more of a neo-imperialistic approach, or neo-imperialistic system, somewhat like the Bretton Woods system, I think, which does allow them to actually exploit these countries. And interestingly enough, there has been attempts in these countries to break out of these systems, but a lot of times they resulted in a lot of political assassinations. So I may be resorting to some devious tactics here, but there have been 40 French military interventions in these countries since they've declared independence. So, we might be doing the same thing. Another suggestion with France was to build an aircraft carrier, so I'm going to have to build one of those too. Maybe a couple aircraft carriers. Actually, I like destroyers too, because there is a new system, a new function on this mod, or on this add-on, that allows destroyers and missile launchers to patrol areas and just attack enemies when they pop up. So that's actually pretty cool. So, I am thinking about improving economy, improving education too. That is another thing. Yeah, look at all that. We're going to try to... I don't know if I can improve education or not, but we're going to try to. And the second video for Caspian Report talks about how all these countries are francophone countries, which are countries that speak France as a primary language, and France is using that as soft power influence over these countries. And Emmanuel Macron has actually been spending hundreds of millions, maybe hundreds of $billions, I forgot the number, on investing in education in these African countries, particularly in French-speaking schools, so that these countries remain within the French cultural, socioeconomic, geopolitical orbit, is what the argument is there. So we're going to try to improve alphabetism in these countries if we can, improve education, and improve the economy as far as GDP per capita. Try to, if I can bring them up to average somehow, it'd be amazing. And then also, I would like to switch to equipment. Religion, sports, environment. No. Environment. I wish you could have more influence in other countries in this game, where I could try to influence their politics a little bit more and prevent them from doing certain things that would be environmentally unfriendly. There probably is, and I should probably try to get these into the Paris Climate Accords too. So, but I was also thinking life expectancy too, just to add that. But I don't think that is under here. Where is life expectancy? Where is life expectancy? Oh, this thing keeps going. Maybe reduce AIDS too. Alright, so I'm actually going to throw the idea out there and post down what type of goals you want. I think you get the idea of what type of scenario I'm looking for. We're going to be associating it with modern French politics, but France is going to be trying to gain influence over these maintain influence over these West African, Central African countries. We don't want rebellions or insurgencies going on in these countries, so we're going to try to help put them down, but we're also going to use soft power and economic aid influence to try to improve the situation as far as health, education, and economy, and disease. That would be under health too. I think reducing AIDS in these countries would be an interesting objective. So I don't know if I can do all that, but those will be the objectives for this French colonialism, as well as promoting reducing global warming and fighting terrorism around the world. Those are going to be our objectives, pretty much, in this series. So yeah, tell me what you think. Feel free to comment, add any specific goals. I'll try to type up some specific goals and put them in the comments down below, and you can tell me what you think about that. But this is just an overview episode. I'm going to actually start playing the next episode. I know that somebody was complaining I talked too much, but this is an overview. Just an overview episode. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're interested and excited. And if you have any ideas on how I can go about doing some of these, achieving some of these goals and objectives, feel free to post those down below as well. Thank you for watching. Special thanks to my Patreon, 2 Patreon supporters left here, Dominic Nisbick and Simon Nord. Love you guys. You guys are the best. If anyone else would like to support me on Patreon, the link is down in the description below, as well as the links to those YouTube videos, and I may also put in a few books on geopolitics that you might find interesting. Peter Zeihan and George Friedman are 2 great political thinkers, geopolitical thinkers of our time. They've been publishing a lot of books recently, and they're really good reads if you want to learn more about geopolitics. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.